"Serve us drinks, ape." The words cracked across the ballroom like a whip, slicing through the string quartet's polished notes. For a heartbeat, the chandelier light froze above crystal glasses and tuxedoed shoulders. Heads turned. Smiles faltered. And in the center of it all she stood, the black woman in a flawless white gown. Tall, poised, phone pressed lightly against her ear. Her face didn't crumble. She didn't flinch. The insult hovered in the air, but she let it hang there, unanswered, like smoke from a fire she'd seen before. The laughter came next, bright, rehearsed, and cruel. The blonde woman in the crimson dress leaned into her circle of billionaires, her wine sloshing like liquid arrogance. "Can you believe it? They'll let anyone in here." Her companions, two men in black ties, one brunette with a diamond smile, grinned wide, eager to belong in her cruelty. The room shifted. Guests in satin and silk whispered behind raised hands. A waiter near the bar paused mid-step. Somewhere in the corner, a junior staffer quietly slid his phone from his pocket, red record light glowing like a small act of defiance. But at the epicenter, the woman in white stood still. Her eyes, sharp and steady, drifted across the faces that mocked her. She tilted her chin, slow, deliberate. Not a victim, not a servant. Something else entirely. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to her. The matriarch of the family pearls coiled at her throat, like trophies let her voice carry. "This is a private gala. Our table is for real investors, you understand?" The way she said real bled centuries of assumption into a single syllable. Heels clicked against marble as the son joined in. Younger, sharper jaw, same contempt. Security should have checked her. This is embarrassing. His laugh wasn't nervous, it was a weapon, meant to slice her dignity clean in front of everyone. She didn't answer. She raised her glass instead, the dark liquid catching light like blood in crystal. Silence was her shield, and the silence unsettled them more than any retort could have. The crowd thickened. Camera phones rose like a second ceiling. A woman in sapphire whispered, "She doesn't look scared." Another man replied, "She should. They're humiliating her in front of everyone." But she wasn't humiliated. Not tonight. Because what the family didn't know, what no one suspected, was that she wasn't just another guest. She wasn't a misplaced outsider. She was the reason the gala existed at all, the silent architect behind the very deal their empire was built on. And the moment to reveal it was coming. For now, she let the insult linger. She let their arrogance echo against the marble pillars. She let the room believe the wrong story. Because when the truth landed, it wouldn't be gentle. It would be seismic. The gala pulsed with money. Not music money. It was stitched into every chandelier, poured into every flute of champagne, and polished into every marble column. The Carter Foundation Gala wasn't just another black tie party. It was the annual stage where billionaires flaunted power and whispered deals that moved markets. She entered alone. No entourage, no bodyguards, no glossy nameplate announcing her worth. Just a white gown that flowed like silence through the room. It wasn't sequined or jeweled, just clean, stark, deliberate, chosen because it said nothing, so that everyone else would speak too much. The family saw her the moment she stepped past the velvet ropes. The mother's smirk barely disguised her appraisal skin, dress, posture. The son's chuckle traveled faster than the string quartet's violins. They had already written her role. Background, staff, not one of them. She ignored it. She moved with unhurried steps, as if she'd been here 100 times before, and she had. But tonight, she wanted to feel it again. That edge between belonging and rejection. She wanted to measure the room before she measured the deal. Guests swirled around her, hedge fund heirs swapping stories about yachts, a Hollywood couple comparing diamond cuts, waiters weaving like shadows with trays of canapes. She fit everywhere and nowhere at once. And that was the point. At the center of the ballroom, the family commanded their circle like royalty. Crystal glasses clinked, cameras flashed, laughter rang out sharp. They were used to being the gravitational pull of a room. Tonight, they thought they'd spotted a distraction, a misstep in couture, an intruder in silk. She paused by their table, not to serve, not to beg, but simply to exist. And for them, that was enough to feel threatened. "Security should have caught her," the son muttered, his cufflinks winking under the chandeliers. "She's not security's problem. the mother replied. She's ours. The black woman lifted her phone to her ear, not to retreat, but to signal. She didn't whisper. She didn't hide. Her stillness was louder than their mockery, and the irony dripped heavy. This very ballroom, the wine in their glasses, even the silk banners draped overhead, all of it was funded by the deal she had built. A $5 billion agreement resting quietly in her pocket like a loaded verdict. But they didn't know. Not yet. Tonight, she wasn't here to reveal power with a flourish. She was here to let them reveal themselves, to let their own arrogance perform in front of witnesses and lenses and history, because she'd learned, years ago, that silence wasn't weakness. Silence was rope, and given enough of it, the powerful always hung themselves. The violin strings sharpened, but their laughter was sharper. "Excuse me," the son drawled, lifting a glass he hadn't poured. "Could you top this off? Pinot only, none of that house stuff." He didn't hand her the glass politely. He held it up like a command. The circle of friends around him burst into easy laughter, the kind that wasn't about humor but hierarchy. The black woman didn't move. She didn't blink. She let the glass hover in the air between them, like bait she had no intention of touching. The daughter joined in, leaning across the table, sequined dress glittering like armor. "She's brave, I'll give her that. Imagine sneaking into a billionaire's gala just to play dress-up." Her voice carried past their table, designed for an audience. Two guests at the next table shifted uncomfortably. One of them, a young man with slicked hair, muttered, "She's not staff. Why are they?" But he didn't finish. The matriarch's voice sliced over him. "This table is reserved for real investors. Surely you understand." The word real hung there, heavy. Real as in white, real as in wealthy, real as in anything but her. Phones stirred in the shadows. A server paused, tray tilting as his eyes darted between the family and the woman in white. Somewhere near the back, that same junior staffer angled his camera higher. And still she didn't rise. Her hand rested lightly on her phone, her posture calm, her gaze steady. The mockery piled higher, but she refused to give it scaffolding. She remembered too clearly what happened when she fed these moments with protest. At 23, she'd been turned away from a hotel bar in Chicago. The bartender didn't even read her ID. He waved her off with, "Not tonight, sweetheart. This place isn't for you." She had walked out, silent, and gone back to her tiny apartment, where she drafted the first business plan that would carry her to empire. At 30, she'd arrived at a boardroom in London. They mistook her for the assistant, handed her the coffee order. She didn't correct them until the contracts were signed, and she'd outbid them all. Now, here, in this glittering hall, the same script was playing again. But tonight she wasn't walking away. Tonight, she wasn't signing after the insult. Tonight, she was letting them write their own downfall live, on camera, in front of their peers. The son lowered his glass, face tightening. "What's the matter? Cat got your tongue?" He leaned closer, a sneer curling at the corner of his mouth. "Or do you only know how to smile for tips?" Gasps rippled around the table. A woman in sapphire shook her head. A man in gray whispered, "That's too far." The black woman finally moved, slowly. She raised her glass, not his, and took a sip. Her eyes locked with his over the rim. Calm, cutting, absolute. No words. Not yet. Because the longer she stayed silent, the more their cruelty filled the silence. And when the truth came crashing down, every cruel word would testify against them. The glass never trembled in her hand. Not once. She sat in that white gown, framed by chandeliers and contempt, and every insult hurled her way dissolved into the air before it could touch her. To some, silence looked like surrender. To her, it was steel. The family leaned harder into their theater. The mother turned, voice loud enough to ripple across the table settings. "I warned you, this isn't the buffet line. This is for those who matter." Her pearl necklace gleamed as though it co-signed her arrogance. The son slouched back, grinning. Maybe she wandered in looking for selfies. Happens every year. They smell money and come sniffing. A ripple of laughter followed, but it wasn't unanimous this time. The cracks were subtle, an awkward cough from a banker at the next table, a forced smile from a woman adjusting her gown, a waiter shifting his tray nervously. The black woman placed her phone flat on the linen, fingers brushing it once, like a pianist finding her key. Then she folded her hands in her lap. No retort, no flinch, only stillness. and the stillness unnerved them more than any outburst could have. The daughter flicked her hair over one shoulder, her bracelets clinking like applause for herself. Not even a word? I expected at least a little drama, but maybe she knows her place. That phrase "knows her place" landed heavy. The words traveled farther than the family intended. A man in a navy tux whispered to his partner, "Did you hear that?" She nodded, frowning, her hand tightening on his sleeve. Across the ballroom, the junior staffer's phone camera tilted higher, capturing the family's sneers, the woman's silence, the tension like static in the air. And still, she didn't move. Because she understood something they didn't. Power was never proven by volume. It was proven by control. And her silence was control. Her mind flicked back, uninvited, to the age of 16, dressed in her Sunday best, sitting in a Charlotte hotel lobby waiting for her parents. A clerk had walked up, told her guests only, and escorted her outside. That humiliation had burned into her bones, shaping the woman who now sat in this ballroom. Tonight was the same fire, but she had long since turned fire into fuel. The son leaned forward again, tapping the stem of his glass against the table, impatient. "What's the matter? Don't understand English?" His friends chuckled, too eager to impress each other to see the weight of what was unfolding. But the rest of the room was beginning to notice. Conversations dulled. The violinist faltered on a note. Phones hovered just above laps, ready to record if the moment snapped. She remained motionless, eyes steady, breath measured, presence anchored. It was as if she knew the secret truth. The more rope she gave them, the faster they would strangle themselves. And so she let them keep talking. The laughter should have drowned her. That was the intent. But instead, it began to draw eyes. From the far corner, a waiter paused mid-step, tray hovering in the air. His gaze lingered on the table where the family sat, grinning like they'd just told the joke of the century. Only it wasn't funny. And he knew it. Near the stage, a young staffer adjusted his bow tie, slipped his phone from his jacket pocket, and angled the lens toward the scene. The red light blinked once, tiny but defiant, a quiet protest against the noise of privilege. At the neighboring table, a couple exchanged glances. The woman in sapphire leaned closer to her partner, voice low but sharp. "Why are they talking to her like that?" Her partner shifted uneasily, whispering back, "Because they think they can." And still, the black woman said nothing. The daughter tapped her manicured nails against a crystal flute, smirking. "She's really gonna sit here? Like she belongs?" Her words landed just loud enough for 3 nearby guests to hear. Their faces tightened. Phones shifted discreetly in hands. The son leaned back in his chair, spreading his arms across the velvet like a king on a throne. "Security must have slipped tonight. Otherwise, she'd be clearing our plates instead of hogging our space." The chuckle that followed was sharp, rehearsed, almost performative, an echo designed for the crowd. But this time, the crowd wasn't laughing. The waiter by the bar whispered to another, "She's not staff. Look at her. That's not staff." His colleague frowned, glancing nervously toward the family. "Doesn't matter. They'll say she doesn't belong, and everyone will go along." Not everyone. A young woman in a navy dress, barely 25, fished out her phone. She didn't raise it high. She angled it just enough to capture faces, voices, and the silence in between. She bit her lip, torn between fear of losing her job and fear of losing her dignity. In the end, she pressed record. The air thickened, conversations dulled around the ballroom. The string quartet played softer, as if unwilling to compete with the spectacle forming at center stage. People were watching now, some openly, some behind glass screens. And at the epicenter, the black woman lifted her glass again. She took a measured sip, her eyes scanning the room, catching cameras, catching stares, catching whispers. She didn't smile. She didn't nod, but the message was clear. "Witness me." The mother noticed. Her tone sharpened, dripping with disdain. "Phones down. This is private." But it was already too late. The footage existed. The words had been spoken. The insult had been sealed, documented, time-stamped. And the silence of the black woman only made it louder. The room was no longer humming with music and chatter. It buzzed with something sharper: anticipation, unease, the low current before a storm. The mother leaned forward, pearls glinting under chandelier light. "This is our table," she declared, each word crisp, deliberate. "And you are not welcome." She didn't whisper. She wanted the entire ballroom to hear. The son followed her lead, waving toward the edge of the room. "Security!" His voice cut across violins, across murmurs, a command sharpened by entitlement. "We've got a trespasser here." A ripple moved through the guests. Some glanced toward the doors where two suited guards stood stiff, uncertain. Others leaned closer to their companions, whispering disbelief. Trespasser? The woman in white hadn't moved. She hadn't broken protocol. She had simply sat down. The daughter added her own venom, her bracelets clinking like applause for cruelty. Look at her. No badge. No invitation. She probably just slipped past the check-in desk. The black woman's phone vibrated softly against the linen. She didn't reach for it. She let it hum once, then still, calm, anchored, untouchable. At the next table, a man in a gray tux leaned toward his companion. "She showed no badge because she doesn't need one," he muttered. His companion whispered back, "But are you going to say that out loud?" Neither moved. The son slammed his glass onto the table, the sharp crack echoing. "You think silence saves you? It doesn't. People like you—" He stopped short, catching the weight of his own words, but it was too late. Too many heard. Phones tilted higher. Fingers tightened on screens. A murmur ran through the ballroom like a spreading flame. The black woman finally lifted her gaze. Slow, steady, her eyes locked onto his. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The silence was heavier than any rebuttal, and that silence rattled him. The mother tried again, louder this time, voice straining for authority. "Security! Remove her! Now! This is a gala for investors, not strays off the street." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The young staffer's recording light glowed brighter in the reflection of crystal glasses. A woman in sapphire muttered, "She didn't just say that." Her partner whispered, "She did, and it's on tape." Still, the woman in white didn't move. She simply placed her hand flat on the table, palm steady, as though she were anchoring the entire room. The guards at the door hesitated. They had been summoned, but something in the air told them this wasn't routine. This wasn't a drunken guest or a gate crasher. This was something heavier, something they weren't sure they wanted to touch. The family, oblivious, pressed on. The daughter rolled her eyes, speaking loud enough for the cluster of guests now openly watching. "Honestly, why embarrass yourself further? Go back to wherever you came from." And just like that, the line snapped. The room no longer belonged to the family. It belonged to the silence, the witnesses, the blinking red lights of phones recording every word. And she, silent, steady, was letting the rope tighten around their own throats. The air in the ballroom fractured. "Get her out," the son barked, stabbing a finger toward the woman in white. His voice was louder now, desperate for control. "Before she ruins the night." One of the guards shifted uneasily by the door, but didn't move. The other glanced toward the host's podium, as if waiting for direction that never came. The daughter rose to her feet, sequined dress scattering light like shards of glass. "This is humiliating. She's humiliating us. Do your job," she snapped at the guards. "Drag her out if you have to." Gasps scattered like sparks. A man near the bar muttered, "Drag her? For sitting?" Another whispered, "They've lost it." The black woman remained seated, back straight, hands calm in her lap. Her eyes followed each word, each command, but her lips stayed sealed. Her silence was louder than their fury. The mother slammed her palm against the table, pearls quivering against her throat. "Enough! This gala is for billionaires, for visionaries, for people who belong, and you—" She spat the last word like it was poison. "You don't—" It landed heavy, too heavy. The crowd shifted, restless now, no longer pretending to sip wine or laugh politely. A young woman in a navy dress, phone trembling in her hand, whispered to herself, "This is going to blow up." She wasn't wrong. The footage had already begun to travel, beams of light carrying every syllable out into the digital night. The son sneered, emboldened. He leaned over the table, close enough for the cameras to capture the gleam in his eyes. "You think your silence means power? It means nothing. You're nothing." But the room didn't agree. 2 tables over, an older gentleman stood. His voice wasn't loud, but it was enough. "Sit down, boy. You've said enough." The command rippled across the marble like a shockwave. For the first time, the family faltered. The daughter's voice cracked, shrill with anger. "She doesn't even belong in this room." And still, the woman in white did not move. She touched the rim of her glass, tilted it slightly, and let the red wine swirl, controlled, composed, untouchable. The guards finally stepped forward, not eager, not certain, but bound by the orders barked across the room. They reached the table, their presence splitting the air into before and after. The son pointed directly at her. "Take her out, now. She's trespassing. She's a fraud." Dozens of phones rose higher. The silence of the crowd was no longer passive, it was charged, electric, ready. The black woman raised her eyes to meet the guard's calm, steady. Her voice, when it finally came, was quiet but sharp enough to cut the room. "Touch me, and this Gala won't survive the night." The guards froze. The family scoffed. The witnesses leaned closer. Something had shifted. The storm was no longer coming. It had arrived. The guards hesitated, caught between the barking orders of privilege and the steady command of a woman who hadn't raised her voice once. Their hands hovered midair, unsure whether to grab her arm or step back. The black woman broke the silence herself. Calmly, deliberately, she lifted her phone from the linen tablecloth. No rush, no fear. She pressed one button, lifted it to her ear. Across the ballroom, the crowd leaned in. "This is Carter," she said softly, her words like a scalpel cutting through the noise. "Activate protocol now." A pause, then a crisp voice answered on the other end. "Understood. Systems live." She set the phone back down. One tap of her finger and the world outside this ballroom shifted. Contracts paused. Accounts froze. The $5 billion deal that hung over the Gala like a crown jewel began to tremble in its case. The family didn't notice. Not yet. The son laughed, the kind of brittle laugh that comes from not knowing he's already lost. "What's she doing? Calling an Uber?" His friends chuckled weakly, but the sound didn't carry this time. Too many ears were listening, too many cameras were rolling. The mother straightened in her chair, trying to reclaim ground. "Call whoever you want. You'll still be escorted out like the fraud you are." She reached for her wine, but her hand wasn't steady anymore. The glass trembled. The daughter folded her arms, scoffing. "Protocol? Please. You're nothing but a seat crasher with a cell phone." But the room wasn't convinced. The murmurs thickened, louder now, the witnesses no longer whispering. "She's not panicked. She knows something." Did you hear what she said? Protocol?" The black woman didn't answer them. She let the air swell with speculation, let the family dig themselves deeper into the grave they had been shoveling since the first insult. Her phone buzzed again. She didn't hide it. She tapped the screen and let the assistant's voice ring out, audible enough for the nearby tables to hear. "Confirmation logged. Transaction freeze in progress. Carter, Goldman agreement suspended pending your final authorization." "Oh." Gasps erupted around the room. The mother's face drained of color. The son blinked, confused. The daughter muttered, "What did she just say?" But the guests understood. A man in a gray tux whispered to his companion, "The Carter, Goldman deal, that's this family's crown jewel." His companion's eyes widened, and she just froze it. Phones tilted higher. Screens glowed brighter. The moment was alive, unstoppable, multiplying itself across the digital ether. The black woman raised her eyes, gaze cutting across the family with surgical calm. She hadn't declared her identity. She hadn't raised her voice. But she had just shifted billions with a sentence. And suddenly, the Gala wasn't about their mockery anymore. It was about her. The murmurs grew into waves. What had started as whispers now rippled through the ballroom, tugging at every sequined shoulder, every polished shoe. Guests leaned forward, phones angled higher, waiting for the moment they sensed was coming. The family squirmed beneath the weight of it. The mother tried to mask her unease with another sip of wine, but her hand shook, the glass chiming against her pearls. The son forced a grin, but his jaw tightened with every tick of silence. The daughter tapped her manicured nails against the table, the rhythm betraying nerves she couldn't hide. And then the black woman stood, not abruptly, not theatrically. She rose as though she'd always belonged in that space, as though the marble floor had been carved for her heels alone. The chandeliers didn't dim, but the room felt darker around her, spotlighted only by presence. Her voice carried, not shouted, not strained, but steady, like the kind of truth that didn't need volume. "You've mistaken me for staff. You've called me a trespasser. You've mocked me in front of your peers." The family bristled, mouths opening to argue, but she didn't give them space. "What you didn't realize," she continued, "is that this Gala exists because of me. The $5 billion Carter Goldman deal, I built it. I am the lead investor. I am the controlling partner, and tonight I chose to sit here quietly to see who would reveal themselves. Gasps detonated across the room. The son's smirk collapsed. The daughter's bracelet stopped clinking. The mother froze, wine glass suspended midair. And around them, the witnesses reacted. A woman in sapphire whispered, "Oh my God." A man in gray muttered, "She owns the deal. She owns them." Phones surged upward like a forest of glowing eyes. The footage wasn't just capturing insults anymore, it was capturing justice in motion. The black woman let the silence that followed stretch, pulling the entire room taut with it. Then she added, sharper now, "You mocked me for not belonging, but I am the reason you belong here tonight. Without me, there is no deal. Without me, there is no gala. Without me, there is no empire for your family to boast about." The son tried to recover, scoffing weakly. "You expect us to believe—" But the assistant's voice rang out from her phone, crisp and undeniable. Confirmation logged. "Carter." Goldman suspended. "Awaiting your final command, ma'am." The word ma'am landed like a gavel. The crowd erupted gasps, murmurs, even scattered applause. The guards stepped back, their hesitation now certainty. They would not touch her. The family sat paralyzed, masks shattered, their power evaporating with each second. And for the first time that night, the woman in white smiled. Not wide, not indulgent, just enough, because the reveal was complete, and the room would never see her the same again. The revelation detonated through the ballroom like shattered glass. Phones shot higher, screens glowed brighter. The hush of disbelief gave way to a rising chorus of voices. Some gasped, some cheered, some simply muttered the truth out loud as if speaking it made it more real. She owns the deal. She owns everything. The family's kingdom began to crumble in real time. The mother sat frozen, her pearl necklace suddenly looking less like wealth and more like chains around her throat. She lowered her glass, hands trembling, wine sloshing over the rim onto the linen. The red stain spread fast, blooming like a wound. The son's smirk had vanished completely. His eyes darted toward the cameras, then back to her, then down to his own hands, as though searching for a script that no longer existed. The weight of his arrogance captured, streamed, immortalized, crushed him from the inside out. The daughter tried to laugh it off, a brittle sound that cracked halfway. "She's bluffing. She has to be bluffing." But no one echoed her. Even her friends pulled their phones closer, scrolling, whispering, "It's true. Her name's on everything." Around them, guests shifted, no longer neutral. Applause broke out, scattered at first, then swelling. Some clapped out of respect, others out of fury at the humiliation they had just witnessed. The sound rolled through the hall, sharp and undeniable. The staff weren't silent either. The waiter who'd frozen earlier now nodded slowly, lips pressed into a tight line of vindication. The junior staffer stopped hiding his camera. He lifted it boldly, capturing the family's pale faces, the woman's calm stance, the ripple of justice breaking across the marble floor. The guards, those same men summoned to drag her away, took a subtle step back. One even crossed his arms, shifting allegiance without a word. Their silence was louder than obedience. The mother tried to recover, voice wobbling. "We didn't mean—" But her words dissolved beneath the tide of the crowd. "She's the partner." They tried to humiliate her. On her own deal. It wasn't just outrage now, it was memory surfacing, shared stories connecting. Guests recalled their own moments of dismissal, of being told they didn't belong, and they poured it all into this moment. The daughter shrank under the weight of it, eyes flicking to the exit. The son rubbed his temple like a man waking from a nightmare. The mother's lips parted again, but no sound came. And at the center of the storm, the black woman didn't gloat. She didn't shout. She let the chaos whirl around her, a living testament to what silence and truth could do. The cameras captured it all. Power collapsing, dignity rising. And the family once untouchable sat exposed, cornered not by one woman's fury, but by an entire room's awakening. The applause swelled, not polite but raw, an eruption of release. The family flinched under the weight of it, their empire unraveling in real time, their names carved into the spectacle now streaming beyond the ballroom walls. The black woman lifted her phone again, her movements deliberate, unhurried, as though she had rehearsed this moment not once but 1,000 times in her mind. She tapped once. Her assistant's voice came through, crisp and certain. "Ma'am, confirmation pending. Do you wish to finalize cancellation of the Carter-Goldman agreement?" The word cancellation cut through the air like a blade. Guests gasped. Phones caught every syllable. The son surged forward, panic finally cracking his arrogance. Wait, no, you can't just cancel $5 billion. But she silenced him with a glance. Calm, cold, absolute. Her voice carried, steady as steel. Effective immediately, I withdraw. The Carter Goldman deal is dead. Consider your $5 billion empire canceled. The room exploded. Some clapped, some shouted, some simply let out the kind of gasp reserved for moments when history turns. The family's faces drained of color, their carefully painted masks shattering in front of 1,000 eyes and 1,000,000 more online. The mother reached for her pearls, as though clutching them might anchor her collapsing world. Please, she whispered, her tone no longer commanding but pleading. You don't have to. But the black woman cut her off, voice sharp enough to silence the hall. You mocked me for not belonging. You stripped me of dignity in front of your peers. You treated me like less than human at a gala built on my deal. There is no forgiveness, only consequence. The daughter's brittle laugh died on her lips. The son sank back into his chair, eyes wide, throat tight. The mother's hand shook so badly the pearls rattled against one another, a hollow music of defeat. The assistant's voice rang through the phone again. Confirmation logged. Transaction terminated. Access revoked. The words landed heavier than any gavel. Gasps ricocheted across the room. Applause roared, louder now, not for cruelty but for justice. Some guests rose to their feet, their claps echoing like thunder. The family sat ruined, not by scandal whispered in shadows, but by their own arrogance projected under chandeliers, immortalized on every glowing screen. And at the center, the woman in white stood steady. She had not shouted. She had not begged. She had not moved faster than her own breath. She had simply chosen consequence over forgiveness. And in doing so, she had dismantled $5 billion with less effort than it had taken them to insult her. The hall thundered with applause, a tide that washed over marble, chandeliers, and the wreckage of arrogance left at the family's table. Phones stayed high, capturing every second, sealing the downfall into digital permanence. The black woman stood at the center, her presence eclipsing the opulence around her. She didn't need to raise her arms, didn't need to bask in victory. Her calm was victory enough. The family sat shattered. The mother clutched her pearls like they were slipping through her fingers, her eyes vacant with disbelief. The son stared at the floor, jaw clenched, unable to look at the cameras. The daughter's sequins no longer sparkled, they reflected only shame. She turned once, slowly, letting her gaze sweep across the room. The witnesses, once silent, now emboldened, met her eyes with nods of recognition. They had seen injustice and, for once, justice delivered in the same breath. She lifted her phone one final time. Log this moment, she said. Mark it clearly. Tonight was the night arrogance met consequence. Logged, her assistant replied, voice crisp, finale. She set the phone down, her hands free again. Then, she spoke not to the family, not even to the staff, but to the entire ballroom, her words designed for the cameras, for the world beyond the chandeliers. You mocked me for not belonging. But remember, this dignity outlasts money. Justice outshines wealth. And tonight, I didn't just cancel your deal. I ended the illusion that your billions could buy respect. Gasps, applause, even cheers. The room leaned into her words as if they were scripture. She turned, her gown sweeping like a banner across the polished marble, every step deliberate. Guests parted for her without command, a silent corridor of acknowledgement. Some reached out as she passed, not to stop her, but to honor her presence. At the threshold of the ballroom doors, she paused once more. She didn't look back at the family. They no longer mattered. She let her final words drop like a stone into still water, rippling far beyond those gilded walls. I don't need the clip you filmed. I am the result of it. And then she walked out. The applause followed her into the night, echoing against glass walls and marble columns, rising like a verdict no one could overturn. The gala that had begun with laughter at her expense ended with silence at her command. The family was left behind, drowning in their own disgrace. But the story had already left the room, carried by every witness, every camera, every whisper that turned into a roar. And in the quiet that followed her exit, one truth remained. She hadn't just ended a deal. She had rewritten the balance of power.